Welcome to my show, BRAiNDS, the brains behind the brands. And today I have a very, very special guest with me. He was a vice president for product management in Motorola. He was an advisor for Google for many of the projects. He was a chief product officer of Flipkart in India for 1.5 years. He's also the advisor and investor in many of the companies across the globe for startups. And currently, he's a CEO and founder for his own brand, Suki. And I have a very special connection with this special guest of ours today. We go back a long way. We were batchmate in our engineering in NIT Kurukshetra. And today, I feel extremely proud and happy about him that one of my batchmates is doing so well. And he's none other than Punit Singh Soni. I'm extremely glad to have you in my show, BRAiNDS, the brains behind the brands. Welcome to my show, Punit.
Well, thank you for having me, Kate. It's such a pleasure to be here. The feeling is mutual. Uh, I am probably prouder of all the stuff you have done. It's quite incredible. I was telling my EA who was helping coordinate this with you that if we took the coolness factor of our entire batch, then K is on one side and the rest of the batch is on the other side.
Come on.
You've definitely done incredibly well, my friend.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you. Thank you. So, Puneet, as we were speaking before we started the interview, this whole concept of brands was basically conceived to help the young entrepreneurs to learn from the people who have achieved in their life and who have created brands. Okay, so today we'll be basically talking more about the things related to creating the brand. But before we get into our conversation, it'd be really nice if you can introduce yourself as a professional. What are the things that you have done and how you have reached till here?
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much. Happy to do that. Obviously, we both were together when we were doing our engineering. So both of us come from somewhat of a traditional engineering background. Most of my early, I would say, career is a cliche. I mean, it's the kind of stuff that you would expect most of us to do. We do engineering, we do our masters, we find a job in an engineering company, and then we grow from there. Somewhere along the way, in relatively a short order, I think my first role was actually a QA engineer. And as many QA engineers know, it's kind of a struggle because you're buried under the totem pole of all the other work that the rest of the engineers are doing. I think I did that for about 3 months. It was 2000 time frame. Internet was booming. Everybody was building companies. I thought if everybody can start something, why can't I? And ended up actually going to a very, very early stage company. I think there were 2 or 3 people. And so that kind of started this journey of trying to figure out, how to build stuff. How do you learn how to put together building brands, building products, building technologies? How do you actually package them and present them in a way that's useful? And so did that, went to business school in Philly, then went to Google, which, obviously is an incredible company of its own right. Ended up actually spending about 8-9 years there in Google in search, which is kind of the, if you really want to know the ins and outs of Google, that's the place to be. One thing led to the other, ended up actually running the mobile apps group. And when we acquired Motorola, I was running software there. Had done that for a little bit and decided it would be nice to change things around completely, and ended up actually in India. We used to hang out when I was out there.
Yes.
As the chief product officer of Flipkart. And then, went to kick off this company called Suki. The thread, and I'll let you drive it because otherwise it becomes like this mega story, half of which is not that interesting. But the thread in all of these choices, Kay, were always, what can you do that actually exercises muscles you haven't exercised before? And what choices can you make that will grow you most as a person? And then all of these choices, going to Canada to run mobile apps, going to Motorola to run software, going to Google, going to Flipkart, starting a healthcare company, come from it. So that's a little bit of a snapshot of my career. It's a little all over the place, but then isn't that the best part of our careers?
Absolutely,
that we can do
yeah.
all sorts of crazy things.
No, I'm sure we are so proud of you, the way you have done things in your life, it's really proud. I tell so many of my friends that, I have this friend of mine who's doing this now and he's gone through this. And I was telling a few of my friends yesterday actually, I'm going into conversation with Punit and this is all he has done. It's a proud moment for all of us, and I'm so glad that you did so well in your professional career.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I wish I was cool like you too, but that's a different
thing. It's a nature's call, I can't help it. So you have to do the best with whatever little you have, and that's what I believe, and that's all.
For everybody who's watching this, you have to remember that you're listening to two people who were in undergrad together, which means that we have a license to make fun of each other in ways that very few others have. So this is the way it's going to work for most of this conversation.
So Punit, coming to the questions of our conversation actually, which will help a lot of people to create their own brands. You yourself has created a great brand, Suki. So I wanted to ask you one important question, which is normally, not in the books of most of the people when they start a company. So when you started Suki, what was the purpose behind creating this brand?
Right. I think that, depending on what your outlook is, the intention, there is an intention behind a brand, and that intention usually comes from what the mission or the reason for being of that particular brand is, right? I spent a swath of my career building products. What are products? Products are not just technical things or physical things that you put around. They elicit a particular feeling, they elicit a particular reaction, they fill a particular need. And when you actually start thinking about that, then you actually have to zoom out and ask yourself, what is the mission and vision behind building anything? And that's basically the genesis of the brand, because when you know what you're trying to achieve through a particular endeavor, then you can actually start packaging and pulling together all the aspects of it that can not just fulfill the need, but elicit the right reactions and feelings in people who actually are using it. And so for us, the critical thing, and it's a little bit of context here, healthcare is extraordinarily broken pretty much across the board, but it's broken in fascinating ways in US. It's I would say like a amazing example of how the wrong kind of regulations and the wrong kind of structure can completely dismantle a very basic human need, infrastructure in probably the richest country in the world. And so the idea initially was just like what you were saying. I felt like I had done a bunch of different things in my career. I was at a point in my career where I had the time to actually be thoughtful about the kind of impact I want to have. And more importantly, you and me both have this. We have a superpower at our disposal, which is we have the privilege of being able to do what we want to do at this point. And so if you could do what you want to do and you had time at your disposal, what would you tackle? And in my case, I decided I wanted to tackle healthcare. Healthcare takes a long time to crack. It's not one of those, let's build a mobile apps company and flip it in 2 or 3 years. This is 10 years minimum of effort before you get to a place where you can make significant impact in this space. And so I wanted to do healthcare. I wanted to figure out what basically would be a very key entry point into healthcare. How would you enter such that you could scale up and expand? And I found this equation. What is a powerful constituency that has a huge burnout issue, the solution of which aligns with an incoming trend? This is a classic equation for go-to-market. If you think about Salesforce, powerful constituency salespeople, burning out because of lack of CRM, trend is on-prem and cloud software. In the case of Suki, powerful constituency doctors, burning out because of regulatory, administrative burden. These people, instead of talking to us, are spending time checking boxes, clicking fields, entering stuff, finishing up all the things they need to do to get paid, and document patient care and stuff like that. And the trend was commoditization of voice. Our kids are screaming at Alexa in the house. Why can't we use that same always on voice technology to document and do assistive tasks for these doctors so they can focus on patient care? So that was the equation behind thinking about Suki, which was, how do we serve doctors in such a way that all of the non-clinical work that they have to do is taken care of? And if you can do that, then not only are you serving a very important constituency, but you're also creating a conduit. Most data in healthcare is created by doctors. So I have the access to that data in a structured format before it goes to any particular database. I can use that data to solve many, many other problems in healthcare, not just the documentation problem I'm solving. So to go back to the question you were asking, what was the genesis of the idea and the thought or brand behind Suki? The idea is, we want to rethink the entire healthcare tech stack and make it assistive and invisible, so that all the participants in healthcare practice healthcare and don't practice data documentation entry, or are not spending time managing technology in a way that elicits the same experience you get when you use a consumer grade product, when you're actually in the middle of using any of the best software that you've ever used. So how do you marry that, the beauty of being able to use a cutting edge messaging app or a game, with this seriously important basic need a human being has, that of healthcare? That was basically the genesis or the idea behind Suki.
Very nice, actually. In fact, I'm personally talking to you about your brand for the first time today, and it's so good to know about, how it all started and what is the purpose. And it's actually a great purpose. You are helping not just one or two people, you're helping the whole community of doctors to, bundle out the things that they don't need to do and focus more on the things that they're supposed to be doing, right?
And the interesting part with this is, not only are you basically using technology that's going to help doctors effectively. If you help doctors, you help patients. And so now look at the progression, right? You went from a world where you were going to do documentation, but that documentation creates data. I can use that data and start actually doing a lot of these peripheral administrative tasks. I can help with order entry. Now I'm actually starting to help with scheduling. Then I can start helping with clinical decision support. Then there is a time where, once you have all of these technologies, why can't you actually provide that to the user, to the patient, who can then actually ping this and say, I have these issues, and then the doctor gets the summary and can actually connect the dots. So there is a very fascinating long plan that you can put together. I mean, to be honest, it's entirely possible I might not do anything else in my life. I might just be doing this. And so then, if that's true, then you have to create these threads that you hold on to. One thread is data. Other thread is one of service, making sure that you're actually in service of these clinicians in a way that actually benefits them. Another thread is consumer brand, which is, I need to make sure they have the same experience that you have when you use your cutting edge gaming and mobile and all sorts of software.
Right.
So all of these are the reasons why you actually work on this.
Very nice. Really nice to hear that, actually. And I'm sure all the people who are watching this video would also be really inspired by the fact that how you actually, the whole thought behind starting your company.
Yeah, that was quite a stressful and insane time. You know this. You have done it so many different times. I think when I got back to US in 2016, I probably took 3 or 4 months to figure out healthcare. And the problem for tech people is, especially Google people, every ex-Google person you talk to who's kind of done a little bit says, I want to do education or healthcare. So it's almost like a cliche,
Okay.
Now you want to do any of these things. It's very hard to do something practical in these places. Also, it's very complex. And so I was lucky enough to have the right network to spend time understanding it. I spent months, in large health systems in East Coast. I would fly to Boston, go to Harvard Medical School, go to Partners, and just walk around in the corridors, trying to figure out what was going on. What I found was, the best way to figure out a problem and to understand if your solution is good enough was to go and sit in the break room with nurses and have lunch with them. Because
Wow.
if there is anybody, if there is anybody who will butcher your idea, it's that nurse. Like, I remember going into these break rooms and I would say, here's basically an idea I've had, here's what I've seen. And they would do such an effective job of dismantling the idea and telling you how awful it is and how you're so stupid for having thought about it. So the day I actually had the nursing group in a break room agreed that I had a good idea, I knew I could start a company. But it was a fascinating experience. I'm sure you probably had some similar experiences, starting India's best kitchen brand. You probably have had to do a lot of fine tuning and back and forth and trying to iterate, right, to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So fortunately, my kitchen brand I launched much after I started my whole entrepreneur journey. So I started my whole journey in 2004. Kitchen brand I launched in 2015. So I had this 10, 11 years of, unprofessionally managed to professionally manage entrepreneur, because first generation of business, nobody in my family was a businessman, and it was very difficult to convince my parents initially and then get into business and then burn your
They were
hand.
probably disappointed in you. They're like, hey, what did you do? You were studying and you were on
They're
this
very
path and now
frustrated.
you're going to do this.
You know what? My mom, she doesn't care about how much revenues and businesses you are doing. She only thing she cares is, hey, listen, you are supporting 1,000 family. That's the biggest happiness for us. The amount of
Yes,
people
that
work.
is important.
So they're very simple.
That is actually also the biggest stress point for an entrepreneur, because
It
you
is.
actually do have the burden of a lot of people's family jobs
Right.
and families.
Right, right. Absolutely. Even for me now, Werfel, we have a hybrid franchise model also. So it's not just my team and the factory, but also for all the showrooms where I have partners who have partnered with us. I feel responsible for them. Before that, when it was just me and Pankaj, we were doing our businesses, we were pretty chilled out. Okay, we're giving our best, and whatever happens, we're okay with that.
Right.
And we'll never take any stress out of it. But when you have so much responsibility of so many people, the stress does come. You can't handle it.
There's no question. I think that's a very key part of this, which is uh, the loneliness of entrepreneurship. There is a lot you can do to share basically your burden with people, but you can't share all of it. You have to make sure that they are at least somewhat buffered from some of the chaos that you have to deal with. And then at the end of the day, it's your baby.
Right.
And of course, everybody wants to make sure it succeeds, etc. But nobody wants it more than you do, which is why the sleepless nights sitting around trying to wonder if that one existential issue is going to be solved or not. But hey, that's the fun, right? That's why we do what we
Yeah,
do.
that's the biggest fun, and it's nice. Eventually, everything that it's a baby, and you don't
Yeah,
mind doing smallest of the work. So I remember, serving people on the table and joining tables, and now also many times I'll start calling, go to the call center and start calling to the customers, as a
yeah,
call center person.
yeah,
The
yeah.
person experience, the kind of information, learning that you get, it's amazing.
No question. I was actually there. In fact, I tweeted about it 2 days ago. I think Deepinder from Zomato was answering a particular care message on a tweet, and then somebody was, going after him. And I was like, "Come on, the guy is like, he's this the best behavior, the best representation of the culture and ethics of a company is when the leader of the company has a service mentality, is out there on the street actually trying to figure. And by the way, that flows into the brand then,
Yeah,
right? Because then
absolutely.
the brand is high quality because the people understand the service mentality permeates the brand.
So coming to the next question, Puneet. So whenever we we are in the verge of creating a brand, or setting up a new business or a new project, many times we're not clear about our vision statement and the mission statement. How was it for you? Very, very clear that, where did you set up your vision statements and you really worked for those visions?
Yeah, yeah. No, it's a very important question, and we actually put a lot of effort into it. Um, in the early days of the company, the primary question that I was trying to ask was basically uh, the first step to building a company, anyways, is there a problem, right? At that point in time, it's too early to say what the vision would be. You're just trying to figure out, is there a hole in the world that you want to fill? And once I found that this problem existed, what that really gives you is an entry point.
Hmm.
If you curtail your ambitions to the solution of the problem you have found, then you're going to build a product. But when you actually open it up to the scope of all the things you can do, starting from there, then you build a company, right? Then you build like this big, huge visionary thing that could go somewhere. And so for us, the problem statement was doctors are not able to have to do a lot of administrative work and end up burning out. But the vision statement was rethinking the entire healthcare tech stack so that doctors and others who actually participate in it can do what they love, which is taking care of patients. Okay, making it assistive and invisible so that people do what they love, which is taking care of patients. And so, uh, discerning between a problem, which is an entry point, a go-to-market, the way you actually enter a market, and a vision, which is the genesis, which is the foundation on which your entire company is going to be built, is very important.
Right.
A vision statement also creates strategy, because whenever somebody says, "Hey, Puneet, let's do this. This is a great idea," I always ask myself, okay, is it creating healthcare tech that is assistive and invisible that will help doctors so that they can do what they love, which is take care of patients? You know, if it's not for the same user, if it is not actually making healthcare tech assistive and invisible, I'm not going to do it. Okay, I have to make sure that all of the narrowness of the company comes from the vision, and the breadth also comes from the vision. And so put in a lot of effort behind actually doing that. We iterated a bunch of times,
Right.
and once you get to a vision that's solid, vision rarely changes, because if vision changes, then your company's pivoting, right? I was in Google for 8 to 9 years. What is Google's vision or mission? It is to organize the world's information to make it universally accessible. I have been out of it for 5, 6 years, but I still know it, right? Because it was ingrained in our head. A vision rarely changes. When it changes, the company's entire ethos is changing now.
Right.
Values, values can change. Values in some ways are very critical, important, rarely change, but will often change depending upon the size of the company, the stage of the company, how much money you have access to, the kind of things you have to do. And then finally, culture is just a snapshot in time. So okay, we created a framework for the company: vision, values, and culture. And we revisited. So every December, the entire company drives up to Tahoe, which is a ski resort about 4 hours from here. We have this hotel that we rent out where everybody just stays for 3 days, and we spend our time asking ourselves, are we true to our vision? Has any by any chance our vision changed? Are we true to our values? Should our values change? Sometimes we add a value, sometimes we remove a value because it's changed, and have a discussion. And then we ask ourselves if the culture snapshot is still exists, is the same. We do this. Suki is only 3 years old, but we have done this 3 times now. And
Right.
every year we intend to do this as long as the company is around, because this, to your point, vision, values, and culture, they permeate the product you build, the service you provide, and more importantly, the brand and representation of the company you want to create for the world.
Right. Very well said. Actually, the biggest take from here for everybody who's watching this video is that, the vision statement, as well as Puneet added the values as well and the culture, is so very important for a brand. And you need to give the right amount of time and importance to it before you launch the brand, because that brings in a lot of clarity about your thought process about the things that you need to do. As Punit said, whenever a new recommendation or new suggestion would come, he would try to correlate that recommendation, that whether it is a part of his vision or not. And listen, until you were very clear about your vision statement, you tend to do, many times you get emotional when you get into business. You try to get XYZ things which should not be a part of your part at this moment. It can be probably later. So when you have a very clear vision statement, it really helps in focusing what you need to do and being essential and understanding what you don't need to do. And as he said that he keeps on iterating and checking every year that is the vision still the same, or as he said, it remains the same most of the time. Are they working towards the vision or not the same way they started, or the culture is still the same, and the values, if it requires to be changed, because you grow with time, you learn things with time. So many times you might change things which might bring in change to your culture a bit, you might bring in change to your values a bit, which is healthy for you because you realize things and you are trying to do it in a better way. So I'm sure, Punit, after hearing you, many people would really understand the importance of vision. Even I personally believe when Warful, basically in Warful, we also have this whole bi-yearly review of our vision, mission, and the way the culture is being driven and our values, And we see that, it makes so much of sense because not just about you. When you're doing exercises like this, your whole team and the people who are involved, they become a part of the vision, and that is so very important that, many times our visions remains with the founder. So that is not going to help the company, I guess. Do you feel the same?
I agree with you. Absolutely. No, in fact, I was thinking about that when you were talking and you hit it on the head of the nail. I think the key thing here is that this could be a production of the founder in the earliest days of the company, but it's no longer the production of the founder.
Right.
You think our culture and our values and are basically just what you say or I say? No longer. They are co-owners, they are co-founders. They are people who basically have put in more heart into this than most people have. They have to have a say in what this needs to go. And culture anyways evolves. Imagine a room and there's 6 people standing and there's a party going on. A 7th person comes in, the party is very mellow, there's music playing, you're talking. The 7th person comes in and he's very boisterous, plays high. The mood of the room changes. If that happens in a room, what happens in a company when a new person comes in? Cultures changes as the company evolves anyways. Values will change once in a while depending on what people want, and actually that's what it's their company, they have to decide. So I agree with you. I think not only is it critical to make sure that you do these things because you can then stay focused and the company succeeds, but it's also important because teams need to believe they own this stuff. It's theirs.
Right. The sense of belongingness should come to them equally like yours, right?
Yes, absolutely. Otherwise it's hard. All of this is hard. Why would you do these things? If I usually tell people when I'm recruiting them, you're probably not going to get paid as much. You probably got to work so hard. There is really no logical reason to do a startup. If maybe things take off, equity is worth a lot, you can make a lot of money, but then we'll have to see how that goes, right? So the reason people do these things are almost romantic. They just want to do an adventure. So you have to make sure they're a part of the adventure. They're not the ones who are just working.
So on a similar line, actually, I was having a talk with one of my friends a few days back. So he has his own company and it's very product driven. And he was asking me, who would be the most important component of your business? So he was talking about anything related to my business. I to understand the question better, I asked him, who is your most important component? And he got back to me saying that, it's pretty simple, the customer. My customer and my customer satisfaction is the most important thing for me. So I told him I beg to differ from you because honestly, I hardly meet our customers. Okay. So I do meet few of them, definitely. but I don't get to meet all my customers for sure. Okay, so I was telling uh, for me, the most important segment of my business is my next level. The people who are in my immediate team. If I can,
Hmm.
somehow make them inherit all my visions, thoughts, and the way I'm looking into this business, then I don't really have to worry about the customers, because any business starts with customer satisfactions anyways. We all want our customers to be
Right,
happy, right? Which business
right. That's good.
entrepreneur would not like the customers to be happy? So that's
Right.
taken, and I told him I focus on, my next level, and I even tell them, you should equally focus on your next level. So when everybody in the company sync that, they share the same vision and they all are focused towards giving customer satisfaction, I don't have to worry about customer satisfaction.
I
So
agree with you. I think very, very interesting insight, actually, Kay. Of course, we do all of this in the service of the user, right? So there's no question that the user is who we live and die for. If they don't like us, it's over. If
yes,
we can't serve them, it's over. But the the people that you have to invest the most in is the rest of the company.
right.
I think in my team, the folks who are in the exec team, it's a team of almost peers, right? It's peers. I mean, these guys are all very good at what they do. Actually, they're probably better at what they do in their functions than I am.
Mhm.
And so I am basically, talking to a person who's a product leader. By the way, my product leader is a trauma surgeon. So
Oh,
she
okay.
basically builds product, but also on the weekends goes and works at Kaiser or Santa Clara, where she deals with gunshot wounds and burn injuries and all sorts of surgical things, right?
Okay.
And so you're talking about a person who understands medicine more than me. My chief operating officer was an internist at UCSF, then went to McKinsey, then after that ran multiple large healthcare businesses. The guy knows healthcare business more than me. The head of design ran speech recognition design at Apple. He knows design better than me. I can go on and on. The point is that you assemble a team of people who are absolutely better than you in the function you hired them for. You learn from them,
Right,
right? And your job is to actually just make sure you can keep them together.
right.
You're the glue. Your
Yes,
job is to build a team out of you are not their superior. You're not better than them. You're a service person. Your job is to put it all together. And when you do that, then they build stuff for you in ways that you can't even imagine doing. So
true.
the most important constituency automatically becomes these people, this high caliber people who decide to spend time with you on this journey.
So true. So I'll just summarize a bit from the vision we moved into people, and then, just
Right.
to let you guys know, a company is not just about you or us. It's about everybody, all your colleagues. Only when you start taking things that way, have a bigger mind, you're ready to share and be a part of everything equally. And accept the fact that it's not about you. It's about all of you. It's about a team that actually builds the brand. Then definitely you are in the right path for success, right?
Yeah.
So the next question is about many times we create our visions, right? And we miss to create the path to the vision. So when you created your vision statement and you're clear about these are the things that I want to do for Suki, did you relate all your processes, your operations charts and everything to your vision? How did you do it?
Yeah. I mean, the truth is that there's a few different things to learn from building a company from start. You are obviously the expert. The swath of my career has been in actually running larger companies or larger organizations within larger companies. You get a lot of infrastructure at your disposal, right? You're in Google, there's a pipeline of extraordinary people coming in. They're printing money in the basement. Everything is great.
Hmm.
Things are happening. It's different when you actually have to start a company. Um, a couple of things that I usually tell people when they're starting a company is be very mindful of what your advantages are. Okay. It's very important to recognize that startups are really, really hard to do. Starting a company from scratch is probably one of the hardest things you will do. So you should leverage every advantage you have. Okay. In my case, for example, my advantage was I understand mobile, I understand voice technologies, I understand in general consumer a lot. So I can use that in healthcare in ways that very few people will be able to use it. That brings a fresh perspective and gives me an advantage. Another advantage could be that I knew I had enough of a network of people that I could seed the team with the right kind of people as I was actually pulling it together. So you have to list out what are the things that you actually have an advantage on. Maybe that mentor who could help you, maybe this experience that you had, maybe a source of capital that you have not thought of, but write it up, whatever those things are.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you actually pull it together, you need to fill in the rest, right? And I followed a relatively structured process.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I spent the first 3 odd months just learning the ecosystem. Then I spent about almost 6 months traveling, observing, putting together a plan, and then actually making sure that I could keep checking it to make sure that my perception of whatever the holes in it were filled. One thing, a word of caution to everybody who's starting a company is do not listen too much to other people. Okay, because when you tell anybody what your plan is, everybody is so adept at finding issues with it. Like, it's human nature that no matter what your plan is and how bulletproof it is, somebody will sit down, some wise person who's never started a company will tell you why you shouldn't do it. So listen to people and observe them to understand the latent need and the underlying ecosystem. Do not ask directly for their opinion. Okay, that I learned very quickly that directly asking somebody what you think is not useful. What is useful is to ask, how does this product work? Is this need really there? What do you think about like this ecosystemic thing? What about this strategy? Ask them questions that are around the pieces that are needed for your product, but don't ask or your company. Don't ask them, should I do the company or not? Because 99% of the time somebody will tell you 99 reasons why you shouldn't. And so pulling together all your advantages, doing your research deeply and figuring out exactly you should be ready such that at the end of the day, and you know this, Kay, very well, the bar to starting a company is when you feel you can take half of your net worth and invest in it yourself.
Right.
When you are ready to go and write a check,
Right.
or go and take a swath of your resources and dump it in, or leave this big job that you had and actually spend the next 5 years doing this, only then you should go and talk to somebody else and say, invest in me. Okay.
Right.
Why would a VC, investor of any kind, actually want to invest a single dollar in you if you can't invest your own half of your net worth and your resources in it? And so that bar, when you hit, when you know you would spend your own money and do this, no matter if somebody did it, is when you raise money. And once you actually start putting the resources in place, then it's not that hard. You have an idea, you have conviction around that idea, you know what your advantages are, you have gotten the resources in place. Now you can spend time exciting other super smart people who you think will fill in the holes in your ability to build this, build a team, and off to the races. And so, super hard to do, but the process isn't complicated. It's not like some rocket science. This is the framework. Yes, every step of it is strewn with a lot of struggles. I'm sure, Kay, you have your own. I cannot even imagine when you started your first restaurant, how that would have been like.
That was a nightmare for sure. No experience at all.
Right, but you did it, right? And that comes from passion and structure. And now if you start something, you have so much experience that you have this ability to put these things in place.
True. So mainly for the people who are the first timer, things are a little difficult, but don't have to panic. You should get that calling. You should get that calling very strongly from inside you, and believe in yourself. As Punit said, there have been many people saying many things, but do your own research. Be open to feedback, but do your own research, and based on your research, take a decision on the feedbacks that you get from everybody. Yeah, and you need to feel it very strongly, whatever you are trying to do. As he said, when you're ready to invest half of what you have, means that the calling is really strong. And then, you are ready to go for it. And then when you are ready to invest yourself, your earnings, as well as your time, and leave such a nice job behind and do this, that means you're really convinced that this is going to do well. Right? And then
you'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, you know, you will do it. Then sorry to interrupt what you were saying, Kay, but
No,
like
that's okay.
the point is when you put these things together, you will do it. Like it's
Yes.
hard, no question, it's hard. But look at the number of people who have done it who had no experience building businesses before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is true. And as he also rightly said that, you need to have your research in place, and then based on the research, you need to have your framework for sure. Don't just start randomly, have your processes in place. Maybe the process is not 100% correct when you start it. You might review it again and there might be smaller changes in the process, but you need to have processes in place. Saying that I'm a new company, let me start and then I'll build my processes, don't go into the trap. Have your processes in place based on the research and whatever learnings that you had till then. And then when you really get into the job, there might be small changes, which is fine. So as he also said, that after creating the vision statement, you had your whole flow chart in place, you had your framework in place, and then you work towards it. So basically, we all have crisis of one very big thing, that is time. So anything that can save time is important for your business. And when you define a vision statement, you're actually saving time because you're eliminating anything that is not required for you. When you're defining your processes, you're again saving time, because you can't keep making the same mistakes again and again and again. So yes, summarizing again, you need to have your process in place. You need to have your path defined to reach to your goal. Right, Puneet?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the goal for people who are starting companies is to find this narrowest possible path that actually ultimately has the broadest possible impact. Okay,
Absolutely.
you have to be. I tell people the idea is to find the smallest scope that can actually stand and delight people. Minimum delightable product, minimum delightable business. Why minimum? Because that needs the least resources and is possible for you as you're a young early entrepreneur with not enough of resources on your hand. But why delightable? Because without delightable, you can't win. You have to make sure these people, and then you have the foundation to build an entire business on top of it.
True.
So minimum delightable product is a very important thing to figure out.
Many companies have a great start. Basically, they do everything right when it comes to beginning of the company, and then they are able to start getting even profits, and establish themselves as a good brand. But suddenly something happens, and then they're not there in the market anymore. Like, for the convenience of the people, my question I would relate to Nokia, for example.
Right.
From 1997 to 2007, they ruled it. Even today, 6 to 7 top handsets across the world, highest selling handset are from Nokia. But suddenly in 2007, they vanished. So what do you do to ensure that, I know your company is still just 4 year old, but still I'm sure you'd
Yeah.
have started thinking on those lines. So how do you ensure that, when you reach a certain position, at least maintain that position and slowly keep going higher? What do you do to do that?
I think the business that we are all in, by the way, regardless of whether you're building India's leading kitchen brand or you're building a healthcare brand or you're building, we were talking about Atul and Give India and all the other things.
Right.
The business we are all in underlying all of this is technology. Okay.
Right.
And the one thing that we know about technology is that it never stays the same. It keeps changing on a day-to-day basis. The world's becoming so fast-paced and ephemeral. Vision can stay.
Right.
But how do you achieve that vision will continually keep changing. And people who actually get wedded and religious about a particular way of doing things, they're just guaranteed tremendous failure so quickly, it's unbelievable. Nokia is a classic case of an example of a company that refused to embrace the idea of Android and the rise of these large operating systems that were going to pop up, and or building their own comprehensive operating system that was open so that people could build apps on it and do stuff. Another example of this was actually Microsoft when they completely missed the mobile angle,
Right.
like completely. Like this company was absolutely primed to do everything it could, didn't completely missed mobile, laughed. I remember Steve Ball laughed iOS and Apple's iPhone out of the stage. They were like, this is never going to happen. Never really thought about their product from a mobile perspective. Were wedded into actually putting it only on Windows platform, which means that now Microsoft users couldn't use it on iOS and Android. And then Satya came about, and he completely fundamentally changed it. He changed a big religion in the company around actually being platform, that apps can be available everywhere, including not just on Microsoft but other platforms. And suddenly Microsoft blossomed, right? It became successful again. When people hold religious, strong, strategic things that make them religion to themselves, they actually create a recipe for a disaster for themselves. And so I am a small company. I'm only 3 years old at this point of time. I have a long, long way to go. But even at this point of time, if I become too religious about these are the 4 features that I have to build, and this is the only way I'm going to win these people, or I am only going to do doctors, I'm never going to look at nurses and MAs and PAs and different kinds of clinicians, or I am only going to build in the US market, I'm never going to look at Singapore and other places where there might be similar problems, but in a different way possible. Or I'm only going to raise money in a particular way and do things. I'm going to kill myself.
Right.
You have to be very flexible in making sure that you test your assumptions again and again and again. This is where actually like a lot of the thought process behind these frameworks that we talk about are very useful. Do not compromise on your vision. Do not break your values, but test them continuously. Ask yourself if that's the right thing. Yes, it will probably be the right thing for large sorts of time, but the definition of it might change a little bit here and there. And it's at the seams of these visions and values that companies are made and broken, right? Basically they fail and succeed at the edges, never at the center. Nokia believed it was going to be a great mobile company, and it was a great mobile company.
Yes.
The edges of open platform where apps could be provided was what they lost. BlackBerry thought that people would continue to use buttons to type. It's the edges of realizing that a glass screen that people can swipe on could change the world is where they lost. So important to kind of think about the seams of your values and making sure that they're flexible, that you actually can look and incorporate the world as it's changing.
Right. So just summarizing the whole point, as Punit said that, you need to be flexible. You need to be adaptive. The world is changing so fast nowadays. You can't even imagine. So don't settle down where you have reached. Don't start considering yourself to the king of everything, because it doesn't take much to come down. So you have to be alert. You need to have a constant research on, you need to have innovations in place. You need to keep thinking what's next, how you can continue being a leader. So for those who have already established their companies, I would say that, as Mr. Punit directed, you need to be flexible, you need to be adaptive and be open to change. And whatever change is better for your company, you should be having an open eye and open ear for all the things happening around you. Right?
Yeah, no question. And okay, it's interesting. I mean, it's like the life cycle of an entrepreneur, right? I mean, you're basically, I kind of tell people this, I'm like, when you put it all together, it all sounds contradictory. Mm-hmm. But at a particular point, if you take one thing, then it sounds very clear. Think about the idea of like, you should have a very strong vision. You should adhere to the vision, but the seams have to be flexible. You have to have very powerful values, but the values should be, we should continue to question them if they're right for us or not. You should have a very fixed, solid, narrow product brand that you're thinking about, but it should actually have flexibility, because you may have to adjust to the world and actually have a slightly different service.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You may win, but you may fail tomorrow if you actually don't do these things. And that flexibility built with strength is what's needed. I think it's a very important attribute of an entrepreneur.
Coming to a very important question for me personally, this question is very, very personal to me. We all have achieved things in life in small and big format, right? But have you ever felt at any point of your life that, what's next besides work? Like, what is that I can do to be someone who is giving back to the community, or be someone who's giving back to my country or wherever, did you ever get this kind of feelings?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, first of all, let's agree to the fact that even when we were just graduating from undergrad and were young and didn't really have anything,
Right.
we were still in terms of just the lottery of life that we won. Parents who took care of us, some resources, education. I mean, so many people in this world don't have any of these things, right? Or have only some of these things. And so the truth is that from there on, the journey has only been upwards. It's been, you're only more and more privileged in life, right?
Right.
So from my perspective, that's a question that's not just worthy of asking now, but it's worthy of asking at every step in your career.
Right.
What are you really doing that actually has an additive value to the world around you? And how do you actually grow and become a better person than you are today in future? And so, yes, that's true. I think I kind of always mixed it in with a little bit of what can I do to get better myself? When I was in Google, I was in search. Search is like a retirement home, man. It's, super successful. Things are going well. You go to work at 9, you come back at 5 or 6. It's great. But I wanted to be in the middle of action, and the only way, nobody wanted to give me a mobile apps gig, and so the only way I could get it was to move to Canada. So I moved to Canada and started the mobile apps group, or helped start the mobile apps group there. And then I wanted to actually, be in the middle of the most important thing the company was doing. So I did social. Mobile was a huge success. Social was a big failure, but either ways learned a lot, right? And then I wanted to actually be running a large hardware software company's swath of its business. And so I ended up actually, when we acquired Motorola, going there. And then I felt like I've done these Silicon Valley things again and again. I want to do something different. So I came to India. And then I said, I have actually been in these VP of blind CXO kind of things. So let's actually go back to the ground floor and started a company. So first part of this, in my opinion, is always try to make yourself better.
Yes.
Because if you try to make yourself better, invariably that humility will bring some positivity to the world around you automatically. Second, build something. I think there's a lot of pontification around how do I make the world a better place and what legacy I leave. I don't know about all of these things, to be honest, Kay. All I know is build something. Builders will build, and when they build, somebody will use it, so the world's a better place.
Right.
And so from my perspective, building something was super critical. And then the area actually can be influenced a little bit by your judgment of where the biggest impact is. In our case, the truth is healthcare needs to be rethought. It needs to be rethought not just in US, it needs to be rethought in India. If artificial intelligence can allow people to automate swaths of healthcare, then can't the same artificial intelligence be used in India in places where, for common issues at least, it can help provide medical assistance? And so you can if you have the right goal in mind and you have the mentality of learning and the need to build something, you will always find a way to make the world a better place and give back. As you said, the act of giving back is a consequence. If you're lucky and you've done things, you will. But the act of actually knowing that you want to build something, that you want to get better, that you want to attack a problem that matters to the world, those are choices.
Right.
So I think it's important to make the right choices. Then life will take care of it. If you're good, you will actually create a positive value to the world. And if you're not, then learn how to become good.
Right. The intention should be there, basically.
The intention is very important. Now you're sitting here, you have a big business, you have a lot of things to do. It's Sunday night for you. You have probably a very long day ahead in front of you, but you're here. You're on a video. You're creating this interview. You're going to post it out there. You aren't going to get anything out of it.
No,
you're doing it because you feel you can build something.
Right.
Because you can get better. Then if somebody watches it and they find it's of use, good for you.
Absolutely.
If they don't watch it, that's fine too.
Yeah. Even if one person gets influenced, the whole objective of making this video is sorted, because when when I started my whole journey of being an entrepreneur, at that time, we didn't have any help actually. That time, even internet was not so strong and I had so much data. So that time I felt actually, if at any point of time in my life, if I'm in a situation where I can actually help the people who are starting the business, I would probably like to do that. And that's what
Yeah.
I'm doing now.
It's awesome. This
It's a
is
different
very
thing. Yeah. It's a different
It's
kick.
very interesting. It's a hard path for people to follow, and we're having a nice Sunday night, Sunday morning banter. If somebody finds value out of it, good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And good thing is that we are also learning from each other. Now, I've seen that, I've been doing a lot of one-to-one mentoring sessions in the in the lockdown. I did some 28 mentoring session, okay, personal mentoring session. And the
Oh,
amount of
wonderful!
knowledge I have gained by, mentoring them is immense. I was so impressed to see so many good brands people are thinking about. It's just that they're not sure about how to streamline it. But it's always a great experience, gathering learnings from around you and then think how, differently people are thinking. It's really nice.
No question. No question. People think that you're teaching people something. You're actually studying and learning from them more
Yes,
than anything.
absolutely. And I've personally, felt that, that while doing these mentoring sessions, even these interviews. So last time I was interviewing Nikhil, who's popularly known as DJ NYK. He's a very popular guy over here.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things, very interesting things that came up, and it was very nice. Like today also, while talking to you, besides the kind of questions that we have been discussing, a lot of other things that we discuss, which would probably help
Right.
the people who are watching this video. That's the whole intent. So
It's
Puneet,
awesome.
yeah. So Puneet, just before winding up for this interview, I would like to ask you to throw some very important tips that you feel. What do you feel the new generations, before getting into any form of business, what are the important things that they should have in their mind?
I think it is kind of sprinkled across our conversation, K. I think that the most important thing when you start something is to have an understanding of the problem. Too many people want to start a company and a business, and they just want to start a company. And you ask them why, it's because I want to start a company. That's not really a reason to start a company. And actually, that's usually a recipe for it not working out. You
Right.
start a company because it's a means to an end. So you have to ask yourself, what problem are you solving? You have to solve some problem, whatever problem that might be. There's no big, small, important, unimportant problem. It's a problem.
Right.
So I would say first thing is always start with the problem statement and make sure you have a clear understanding of it. Second, I would say always, once you have figured out the problem statement and have some idea of solution, ask yourself if somebody would buy it. Products can be built. Go to market cannot be built.
Right.
Either the person will buy it, if the user will not buy it. You have to have a very good sense of go to market. You have to have a very good sense of how it will solve it for them, whether they will want it, and what kind of feelings do you want to elicit in them, what kind of reactions you want to elicit to them. So this, going back to the idea of a brand, will the brand be accepted or not is not something you can just randomly create out of thin air. You have to have a problem statement, you have to have a sense of a solution, and you have to ask yourself, how are you going to get that in the hands of the customer? And if it actually feels legitimate and real, then you have a shot. So I would say those two steps are super critical. And then to some extent, what you were alluding to, the next big, most important thing you can do to make yourself guarantee success is build a team of equals, a team of people who are smarter than you, who basically you can learn from and hopefully they can learn from you, who will want to come together with you and actually build this company. And once you have that, then having a very powerful vision, values, culture framework that you can keep checking on, such that you build this minimum delightable product that actually really, really, really focuses your energy on building something that delights the user. So I would say that's the framework I would follow to build a company. You can build India's leading kitchen brand using it. You can build a healthcare artificial intelligence using it. You can build a mobile gaming company using it. The system is not too different. What happens in the content is what's different, and that's up to you to create.
Lovely. I'm sure this is going to help all the people who are watching this video. And coming from somebody like you, Puneet, who has not just created your own company, but have been a leader for many big names in the world like Motorola, Google, Flipkart, and you have had many people working with you in your team. And with so much of experience behind you, and then eventually creating your own company with so many advices from somebody like you, would be something very, very valuable for the people who are watching this video. Because sometimes you'll hear advices from here and there from many people, and those may be out of books, out of YouTube videos, or out of somewhere free hearing from somebody else. But today what you heard from Puneet is something that he has experienced, and he has done it in his own life, in his own company, and then shared with you. So the information that has come to you today, the tips that has come to you from Puneet, it's extremely valuable. And I would request all the people who are watching the video to take notes, go back and review your own self based on the tips that you had got today. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of learning from here. And the whole idea of this show is to keep it as open as possible. If you'd have realized throughout the whole evening, Puneet has been really kind enough to speak everything possible that can help you guys. There's nothing that he was trying to keep and not share with us because as a trade secret. He's been absolutely open about how he created this company, how he has been doing review sessions, how important is the team, how important is the culture, the values, everything. And I'm sure if all of you look into it and go back and learn from it, there'll be definitely a lot of learning for your own journey of being an entrepreneur. So Puneet, just before we wind up, would you like to say anything to the people who are watching this video?
Well, no, I mean, you summarized it very well. All I would say is best of luck. Remember, if you want to do something, just go and do it. Life is short. Don't sit on the sidelines waiting for it. Just go and grab it by the neck and go and make it happen, right? And if you want inspiration, look at the guy who started tons of restaurants and clubs in India's largest brand, and probably will do other crazy things soon. I'm very excited to be here.
Thank you, man. Modest, guys. Don't listen to him. He has done so much in his life. He's trying to be modest over here. Once again, Puneet, I would really like to thank you for taking out so much of time, especially it's a Sunday morning there in your town, and you are here sharing your life and your professional experiences with me today, which is going to help so many people watching this video. Thank you so much for taking out the time and being a part of this show. And it was lovely talking to you. I know we caught up after such a long time, for such a long duration of time, actually. And it was nice talking to you once again. And thank you so much, Puneet.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for the opportunity. I didn't realize that we were interviewing. I was just talking to a friend. So I learned a lot.
Yeah. That was the beauty about the whole talk,
Stay in touch and let's catch up again. And, if you need any help, if I can help in any ways, if there are other people you want to talk to in the Bay Area, let me know.
Sure, I'll do that. Thank you so much, Puneet. Thank you so much.
Take care, man. See you later. Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye, Puneet.